Well, this week we've got a practitioner spotlight lined up for you guys, a little interview we're going to do here today in a few minutes. And it's a little bit more of a kind of like a practitioner spotlight and maybe a staff spotlight as well, as we've got Lisa Pomeroy on with us today. And she's going to share a little bit about herself. If you guys are doing FDN at all and you haven't met Lisa, that's kind of a rare occurrence there. Lisa's been so involved with so much of mainly our postgraduate support. Obviously, she's doing a lot of R&D for us, and she plays into improving our course and the labs, interpretation, protocol, those things, but especially if you graduated the course and you're running labs and you're doing this work, you probably talked to her at some point along the way. So either that's a medical director, a program consult, been with her on that, getting replies from her on the Guaranteed Answer Forum on AFDN-P, or learning from her from our new advanced modules. So Lisa's behind putting those together. So, and we'll have a brief announcement about the next one we'll be releasing here in a second. But so she's got her hands in so many different areas trying to support you guys once you graduate and then give you that additional learning, and still all within the context of FDN. So you don't have to filter through a lot of the extra stuff or ways of thinking. It's still within the safety and the philosophy of what we do here. So, but anyhow, Lisa's got quite a list of accomplishments and credentials, and you guys know she's got an incredible brain, but also she has a heart too. And today we hope to learn more about the person of Lisa. So, Lisa, are you there?
I'm here. Thanks for having me on today.
All right, good to talk with you here. So thanks for being on and opening up and letting us know more about your history. I know you've shared some of it during medical director consults, and some of what you talk about is from your own experience, also from training and things that you've done, all your training for the years. So we just appreciate everything you do for FDN, and getting glad you're here. So tell us how you got to FDN. How did the connection? How was that connection made?
Sure. Well, I was really interested in health from a young age. My father was a veterinarian. My mother was a dietitian. So it was just normal for us to have conversations about, tumors and health conditions and all sorts of issues at the dinner table. So I just always had that love for learning and just about health specifically. And all my life, I had actually planned to become a veterinarian like my father. My father was a third-generation veterinarian, and I worked in his office, his veterinary clinic, since I was a teenager, and just thought, that's what I'm going to be. But life kind of had other plans. Basically, I started getting sick at the age of 12. I always had a fussy stomach when I was little, but then the pain became really severe in my teens, and I was having ulcer-like pain in 7th grade. And, I wish I had known at that point that I had H. pylori and all sorts of parasitical infections and worms and SIBO, and you name it, I had it. That's what everything I've done. It's like I can say, been there, done that. I've had it. I've tried it. I've gone through a lot over the years. But that's what I was doing, fresh cabbage juice, because I knew that could help with the pain, and it's actually an old wives' remedy for ulcers, which ulcers are mostly caused by H. pylori. But I just had, terrible pain and fatigue and all sorts of symptoms. By the time I was in freshman year in college, I could hardly function. I was basically bedridden. I would come home from class for the day and just kind of collapse in bed. Couldn't even get my homework done. I'd be vomiting half the night, have to get up early the next morning, try to do my homework really fast to get to class in the morning. So it was just horrible. I knew that I had to figure things out. And I had been to every kind of, conventional practitioner, holistic practitioner, and no one could help. And so I finally realized that I had to learn this myself, because who else is going to be more motivated to get me better than me? And so that's what I just immersed myself in everything. Got into diet a lot with, Weston Price and all of that kind of the specialty diets. And, we ground our own wheat and we sprouted it and fermented it into sourdough and did all these things, and raw milk, and, the progression from, the early 90s to where we are today. And, you just kind of go down that rabbit hole of trying to learn more and more and more, listening to every kind of podcast you can, reading every book. And somehow I came across Sean Croxton and listened to, I think it was his Underground Radio, his podcast, and then I heard about that Reed was going to be a guest and listened to that, and I thought, wow, this is a missing piece for me, because I had already been a naturopath for a number of years at that point, but my focus was more on recommending dietary changes and natural supplements. Again, it was still more symptom-based rather than lab-based, and I had only dabbled in using functional lab testing, the ones available back in the day, Great Smokies labs for stool testing, Metametrics, all of those. I did a stool test on myself for gluten, since Zyrex Labs didn't exist way back then. And this was that missing piece of this would teach me labs, which ones to use, because I knew that there are a lot of labs out there, and some of them just weren't too good. And so it, brought me to BioHealth, learning their high-quality labs, how to interpret those, how to develop protocols. And it just made me such a better practitioner, because I could then bring in that missing piece of the lab work. So then instead of just, being like conventional medicine but using natural products to treat, symptoms instead of drugs to treat symptoms, I could actually identify that root cause and then use those natural protocols and natural products and dietary changes to bring about the effects I wanted to see.
So you weren't unlike a lot of people that
story.
come. Yeah, it's good. It's an amazing story. I've gotten to know you over the course of years here, and what you've gone through and what you've done for yourself. If there's, like you said, if there's a lab you haven't ran, or some therapy or some supplement or something methodology to do, you've tried it on yourself. You've done it all. And it sounds like that a lot of people that come through the course, just what they say, just like you did, and was missing that extra piece. I needed some more information. I need to understand the functional lab testing. So even with all your certification things you've done before, there still was a missing piece. That's interesting to me. You think that'd just be assumed that would be part of it, but unfortunately it sounded like it wasn't. So, so that's good.
It helped with some things. I mean, it definitely... it definitely improved in some things, but you reach that wall where you just can't progress beyond that, and that's because, like, hidden infections, I mean, with me, it's all about the gut, because, I mean, I had half a dozen parasites and H. pylori, I had worms, I had SIBO, I had, gluten sensitivity and Hashimoto's, and all these things that are based in the gut. And I find that so many other people, that's a similar thing, issues either with their diet or hidden pathogens, and you really need the testing to identify that, because you can eat the best diet, you can have a perfectly clean environment and everything else. If you have these bugs in your gut that are stealing your nutrients and creating inflammation and damaging everything, you just can't get better. Right. And it does take some time, doesn't it, for some people? Exactly. And that's why I always encourage people, too, that, don't give up, especially with pathogens, too. I mean, I didn't find all of these all at once. I say, parasites, finding them is kind of like peeling an onion. You find the top surface layer first, you get rid of that, you work on healing the gut, and then you start to see more and more and more come out. And so you're just going layer upon layer upon layer until no more is showing up. But I have a lot of people where they run one stool test and say, oh, I don't have parasites. It's like, well, do you realize that the more damaged your gut is, the more likely you are to have pathogens hiding? Everyone knows about the villi, the upward finger-like projections in the small intestine that absorb your nutrients and secrete different enzymes to break down food. But a lot of people don't realize there are these things called crypts that are in the small intestine next to the villi. So the villi go up, the crypts go down, and so there are these pockets in the gut. And if you're eating inflammatory foods like gluten and dairy, you have parasites or just gut inflammation, these crypts will widen and deepen. And it's a perfect, nice, deep little hole for these parasites to go inside and just curl up and make themselves at home. And then you have mucus plugs and everything else that goes on top. You're not going to find them when you do a stool test. So you may have your first stool test comes back perfectly clean. Or maybe you find one thing and you think, oh, well, that's it. I had blastocystis hominis. That's it. I dealt with that. I'm not going to retest. It's like always confirm with the testing, and don't always assume that you're seeing the complete picture. We're often just seeing what's on the surface, and sometimes you just got to do some work first, and then you'll start to see your later tests may look way worse than your preliminary tests.
Kind of like what we were talking about last week on the Friday call is everybody needs to do FDN thoroughly enough, but also long enough. So you may have rounds of retesting, still finding things, but like you're saying, don't be discouraged. it's just part of the process. If you don't think you're improving or it's taking longer than you think, it's okay. It's just your process, and you're going to get there eventually. But just kind of hang in there and don't give up. That's kind of what I'm hearing from you. Definitely a testimony to not giving up on yourself.
Exactly. And I have a recent client right now, too, where, we just had to keep digging and digging because, as a clinician, there's something there. And so you just have to keep encouraging the client and keep pursuing all angles to try to investigate what that is. So he can't sleep laying down at night because he has draining from his throat, so he has to keep clearing his throat. So it's almost like a GERD reflux type issue, but there's no pain or discomfort. So it's not really like that, but it fits that kind of description. So right away I'm thinking H. pylori. Well, the test comes back, there's no H. pylori. There's 2 parasites, there's some yeast. So I said, maybe it's them. So we go through the protocols, deal with those. No improvement whatsoever in symptoms. So it's I'm still, we base a lot of things on lab tests, but still, first and foremost, you're still a clinician. You got to correlate those lab results with the client. And sometimes you have to do what makes sense clinically, even if you're not necessarily seeing the proof on paper. So with him, I thought, let's just do an H. pylori protocol. The mastic gum is just a general GI soother. It's really not going to hurt anything. So let's do an H. pylori protocol and see. Well, we got quite a bit of improvement with that. He now can at least sleep laying down for part of the night. So it's okay, we're not all the way there. There's something else there. So we did a pathogen retest, and now we got rid of the 2 parasites, and the yeast is less, but now we have 3 new parasites and still a lower level of yeast. So it's okay, this is good news. So I'm telling the client, this is really good news because I know that there's got to be something more there because we've only seen maybe, 33%, a third, symptom improvement. And I want to get us to 100. So I know there's something below the surface, and we just have to keep at it. He changed his diet. That wasn't doing anything. So it's I'm betting it's pathogens. And sure enough, we got a whole nother load on this new layer.
Wow. I've had that experience too, and you're right. And when you first start out, it's a little bit disheartening or a little scary sometimes. You think, you start to second guess. The protocols don't work, or they didn't do something right, or I didn't do something right. No, sometimes it's just part of the process, and it's okay. You want to find, quote, those healing opportunities, and that's what you're still finding with that client there. And I think another big point that you made too is also to be a clinician. That is another huge point you made there because you've got lab results, but you have this person, how they're presenting, what they look like, their symptoms, and who they are, whose test results are these. So you can, quote, deviate from the test results if you want to because you're being a good clinician. You understand and see those things. You don't have to always have a test result to give you a good idea, looking at something, observing, and be able to figure out what to do. So we make those practitioner calls ourselves, and we're fine to do that. And we have to, and we got to think that way. It's both sides of the coin here. There's both. For a lot of people, they didn't have the lab testing aspect, but you got really good observing and listening to things, listening to the client. Well, you add in the functional testing, you're great. Other people have the opposite problem. They're not very good clinicians. They really don't care too much about that, but they've got these lab results, and they treat the lab results. Neither one of them is good or complete. All those things, boom, come together. That gives you your best results, most information, best recommendations, best results.
Exactly.
Yep. Well, let me ask you a little bit about yourself as far as your journey kind of working on your own health. Did you find the changes that you had to make easy? Are you naturally kind of a disciplined person, or were there some struggles along the way for you in this process?
Yeah, for me, a lot of the basic, diet and lifestyle things, I had already been a naturopath for quite a while before doing the FDN program, so I was already familiar with, a lot of those basics, so that wasn't very hard for me to, need to change anything radically for that. But what it really helped me with was, helping to further investigate and eliminate a lot of the pathogens. But, the diet is so key for so many people, which, back in the day I, heard about that gluten could be a problem and connected with Hashimoto's. And I had been diagnosed with Hashimoto's. And so, of course, the doctor's explanation was, Well, we have Hashimoto's, you're hypothyroid, you're having symptoms of it, but we're just going to, give you some thyroid medication and just, over time the thyroid gland will destroy itself and then you'll just be dependent on medication for the rest of your life. And that was the only advice that I got. And I thought, well, that's not acceptable. I can't believe that there's nothing I can do to prevent this and either stop the progression or, maybe reverse things a little bit. And so that's when I heard about the, Dr. O'Brien, before he, made it big, he was speaking a lot locally in the Midwest here. And so I heard him talk way back, 10 years or so at a local chiropractic college. He was giving talks all the time. And so he was talking about gluten back then. And so I thought, wow, this, there's a connection with Hashimoto's. Let's test for it. And so the only testing around at the time was this lab called Intero Lab, which did a stool antibody test. And so I thought, okay, we'll do this, tested my whole family as well, and it came up with positive elevated antibodies to gluten. So I'm a very, cut and dry. I go all in 100% immediately. Everything is cold turkey with me. There's no easing into it or anything. When I make up my mind to do something, it's okay. I don't care how hard it is. I'm doing it. And so I got the test results. Next day, it's like, okay, I'm going gluten-free. So I started that, and, it took 11 months, but my Hashimoto's went into remission. No elevated antibodies since then. But it took that long, and that's why I always tell people, too, that, every time you get exposed to gluten, it's going to create antibodies in your system that last for 3 to 6 months. And so that, one bite of cake, one sip of beer, is it worth the 3 to 6 months of having these immune antibodies in your system? You have no idea what they're attacking. So for me, it was my thyroid gland. But I couldn't feel that. I went gluten-free, and I didn't feel one bit better. And that's what so many people tell me is, oh, yeah, I went gluten-free and dairy-free and grain-free. I didn't feel any better, so I started eating it again. It's like, well, you don't know what's going on inside your body. You still need to test for it. You still need to, look beyond that, because for me, even today, I don't know if I had gluten, would I feel anything? I don't know. But what I do know is I would start that inflammatory cascade where my body starts attacking its own cells, and I would destroy my thyroid gland. So for me, that's motivation to stay gluten-free, even if I never have one symptom improvement from it.
Got to be strict sometimes, and for certain things for a long time, some things you can have a little bit of freedom with, but when it's damaging your body like that, you're right. It's like, you have situations like that occur with, family members, people like that. It's a wake-up call sometimes. It's like, hey, you've got to get serious with this, and you need to be 100%. If you really want to get the results, let's be 100%, and you'll get that. Otherwise, I think sometimes we do a disservice to people, and we're not as upfront as we need to be, and as direct as we have to be with people. And then they just go thinking they're doing everything right, or hey, I tried FDN, I tried this natural approach, and it didn't work. It's because you maybe weren't being as direct and upfront and having enough requirements on them. So there's a balance there. There's a balance of you have to reduce stressors and let people live life and enjoy themselves, what we're trying to get to, but for a time, sometimes you've got to have some additional restrictions so they can eventually live life and gain back their health and life. So let's talk about your practice and what people that you've worked with, your history of working with people. So is there a certain segment of the population or a condition or something that you saw a whole lot of when you were working with people, or is it kind of wide and varied?
Sure, yeah. A lot of people find me with the naturopath credentials, and so they more bring a broad spectrum of symptoms, so I kind of see a little bit of everything. In general, it's more women that are seeking me out rather than men. But, symptoms vary, a lot of hormonal symptoms, because a lot of the women are more, 50s, 60s, are going through menopause, having hot flashes, and all these things come up, gaining weight. So weight gain is a common complaint that I get. But, it really runs the gamut. Sometimes it's more digestive symptoms, sometimes skin issues. Since I really enjoy dealing with the gut, because that was my problem area, and so I really enjoy finding these parasites too, because it's kind of like an aha, there we go, that's the reason. So for me, I'm trying to maybe niche down a little bit more into gut issues, because that's just my favorite thing to do.
What areas do you find to be the most challenging for people to make changes in? Is it the diet side of things? Is it taking time for themselves? Is it mental, emotional things? What do you see as biggest challenges for clients?
Yeah, a lot of times it's the diet piece, because a lot of people just find it challenging, especially around the holidays like now too. People say, well, can I see in a couple months from now, because I want to be able to eat my cookies and everything and stuffing for Thanksgiving and all that kind of stuff. It's like, well, you don't, even though you change your diet doesn't mean that you're never going to have anything good again. You just have some substitutes. You still have to make those dietary changes, and that's where I get the most stuck with people, or it gets the most frustrating. Like there's a 19-year-old college student right now I'm working with, and she has terrible hormonal issues, and she's in college, and she just says, I can't make those changes. I can't, go away from my cereal and milk for breakfast and my this and that for lunch and dinner. I just, can't give up the gluten and the dairy. It's just the way it is. And so, again, we've been getting, very slight improvement. Her cycles are more regular now, which is great, but still some symptoms there. And, I just wonder, if she could make those dietary changes, how much further progress we could have. So it's very frustrating for me as a practitioner, because I know that there's so much more potential, and I know that the diet is so key. And when the person can't do that, it makes some of my just natural other suggestions of protocols and supplements, seem not very effective, because the person really needs to take control of their own health. I think too many people become too dependent on us as practitioners, where, well, just give me a pill. I mean, we get in this mentality, too, with just allopathic medicine, as there's a pill for every ill. And so they still kind of expect that with natural medicine, where you just give me a pill, I don't have to change my diet, I don't have to change my lifestyle, and everything's going to be fixed. And so they don't want to put that effort into it. And it's like, we know that, yes, it is going to be hard, but most of us have gone through it ourselves, too, because most of us had our own health challenges. And so we're not asking people to do anything that we haven't done ourselves. And we saw the results with both ourselves and with our clients that there's a definite reason that we're recommending it. It's not just to be mean and super restrictive. It's because we know it works.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever have to turn people away that want to work with you?
Yeah, I've gotten better at that. At first, you're just looking for new clients, and so you just take anybody. And so I've learned to be more selective as I've gone on and become more comfortable with everything. And just, there's some people where I see they're on a list of a couple dozen medications. It's like, no, that's just, everything I'm going to suggest is going to interact with that. That's where I tell people, don't be afraid to refer out. If something is really complex, those interactions, you don't want to get in the mess of that, in the middle of that, if there's a mess because they have a reaction to something and their doctor comes after you and all that kind of stuff. But, that's where I say, okay, look at IFM, the Institute for Functional Medicine. There's a lot of licensed practitioners there. Maybe you just want to, work with one of them to help. Which medications do you need? Why are you on some of these things? Could they, they can speak to them about the medication. We can't. We can't recommend that anybody, change dosing, go off a medication, anything like that. The only thing we can help them with is diet and lifestyle. So that's what I'll either only take on those clients as just diet and lifestyle type of consultations, but I won't get into all the rest, actually doing a lot of the herbs and that kind of stuff, because I just, with the way everything is these days, you just have to be very careful with that kind of stuff. Or things that, I don't feel like I specialize in. I don't work with a lot of children, and so that's where, again, I have a list of different, practitioners or organizations where I'll say, that's not my specialty, and so, this might be a better choice for your needs. And so I've gotten to the point where I'm not afraid to refer out, or if someone has, Lyme disease, mold toxicity, that kind of stuff. They need someone who has a lot of experience, really specializes in that. I can help them generally, and, the work we do, I think that, the gut and adrenals and all that kind of stuff should be addressed before they start dealing with heavy metal toxicity and Lyme disease and that kind of stuff. But, at least, maybe it'll start working with them, but I'll let them know at some point you probably have to go to someone who's going to specialize in that, because that's a little beyond what I do.
Mm-hmm. So what things would you see in a person that would be a great client? What things do they say, or personality traits? What do you see as good things that pop up?
Yeah, I look for people that are, they say that I'm motivated. I'm willing to do whatever's necessary. I'm willing to take supplements. I'm willing to change my diet and my lifestyle. I like to see that they've already tried some different diets, that they're not just currently eating the standard American diet, but that they've tried, gluten-free or dairy-free or paleo or FCD, something like that. And either maybe it helped only slightly or didn't help at all, but it shows me at least they can do something like that. They're willing and able to. So I like to just the attitude is a lot of it. Attitude, and especially just willing to change, willing to try things, knowing that this isn't a quick fix also. I don't want someone who is looking for that pill that's going to fix things, but knowing that, this will take time and effort and money. We have to test, we have to retest, we have protocols to do. You're going to have to purchase your groceries differently and do all of these type of things. So I need to make sure that, that type of person is the one that I'm looking for who, has the want, the desire, the capabilities of making those changes.
It's key, because we want them to have success, and if maybe the timing's just not right. And I would hate to kind of push somebody into something that they weren't really ready for when they might be ready in a year from now or 2 years from now. It's okay to turn somebody away, and that they might, again, they might kind of feel like they got burned or it didn't work. They pushed too far, and it wasn't their time, and hey, now's their time a year later, and they get good results. So you got to think about that too. We're actually maybe doing a disservice sometimes if we put them in a position where we know they're not going to succeed at the moment. So what about?
And there's a lot of functional medicine practitioners. I was just going to say a lot of functional medicine practitioners have written great books now too. Yeah. So I recommend, it's like, okay, you want to, I'm recommending gluten-free, but if you're not convinced of that or not willing to do it at this point, or you need help from your family and they're not supportive, read Wheat Belly, read Grain Brain. There's books out there that, will explain this stuff, and they have the footnotes and the research articles behind them. And so you can give people those books, or Dr. O'Brien's new book about autoimmunity. You can look through those books and, convince yourself that, oh, okay, yeah, I see what she was saying, go gluten-free. I now understand why I should do that. I'm not necessarily there to hold their hand and give them, here's 20 reasons why you should go gluten-free. The person has to trust that I'm the practitioner. I know why I'm recommending it. I'm not going to give you the full bullet-pointed list why. I'm not going to give you all these research articles and proof and all this kind of stuff. So if you need that, go read a book and start there, and then, hand it to your family member, and then they can see it and go, okay, my wife isn't nuts. I can, there's a reason for doing this, and maybe I'll give it a try with her, or I'll at least support her in that. Because a lot of people, one person wants to do this, and the other one's kind of dragging their feet, or they want to put the kids on it, and the one spouse isn't supportive. And you really need to get everybody in the family, not only, moral support, but also not sneaking food to the kids that are going to be contrary to the dietary recommendations.
Right, undermining things, exactly. When you're good, it's right, too, about giving people options. So if you say, well, you can't eat this anymore, well, here's an option. Here's something that's comparable to it. And that's why I feel like it's really important when it comes to when you put, quote, dietary restrictions on people, that you give them something that they can do in the place of that probably they're going to get used to anyhow. I know the switches that we've made over the years. A lot of things I don't miss that I used to eat. It's like I'm fine with what I have right now. And I tell people sometimes it takes a little bit of time. Your taste buds will adjust, your body will adjust, and you'll learn to crave these more healthy foods or these alternatives, and they'll be just as good. It's just getting over that hump of, okay, this is different, I don't like it as much. Eventually, it'll be okay.
Exactly. Yeah, I used to put cheese on everything, and so for me, when I learned I had to go grain-free and dairy-free, it's like, what am I going to eat? I don't know how to do this, but it's one of those things you cut it out and you find substitutes, and it's like, now cheese tastes like cowy to me. It doesn't taste good. It's like I like my cashew cheeses and my nut cheeses and my coconut milk and all that kind of stuff. And, when I was little, I hated milk. Unless I dumped a bunch of Hershey's chocolate syrup or something in it, I couldn't even stand it. So it's like it's my body telling me, you have an IgE allergy to milk. You shouldn't be having it. I'm giving you this natural aversion to it, and you're not listening. And so, you go with that later, and you go, wow, I really didn't like that, and it wasn't good for me, so I should have listened to my body.
Right. Well, you guys, if you have a question for Lisa, we welcome those questions. I think we got plenty of time in the call today. If you guys wanted to hit one there and jump on with a question and maybe ask her, I guess we can open up about anything. Maybe we'll avoid some really complex cases maybe, or a case study or something where we don't have all the information, but general questions are really good for Lisa. She can handle those quite nicely, or just about her story or experiences. Feel free to ask questions on that. She'll share that. So, guys, I'll be looking for you there on the switchboard. Jump on if you have a question. But let's switch gears, Lisa, again, and then we kind of talked about your story and your history a little bit there, what you've been through, and talking about your work as a practitioner. But I feel like your heart is really in the research and development and building curriculums and training and studying and all that aspect of things. So tell me how you got more into that. Has that always been a part of what you like to do, or was it something that you kind of, I don't know, somebody gave you some kind of opportunity? How did you end up getting and enjoying the research side of it so much?
I think it's because I had to do it out of necessity for myself, and then I just kind of enjoying that looking for the answers, because there's always cases that puzzle you, and so you just want to strive to learn as much as you can. So it's like I listen to every kind of online summit or podcast. I attend seminars and webinars and read the latest books and all these kind of things. Is I want to continue learning, because you just have to continue growing as a practitioner, because you just think just a couple of years ago SIBO was something that people were hardly talking about, and now it's everywhere. And BioHealth just recently introduced the test for it as well through that lab. And so you just have to stay on the cutting edge, because there's always new research being done too. And the more we know, a lot of times we haven't understood the mechanisms behind a lot of these things. So now if we understand that, we know how to deal with them much better. So our protocols can become more laser focused, and we can get things to work better, quicker. So for me, I just love doing that, because I love being on the cutting edge and finding out new stuff. And when I recommend things to other practitioners and to clients, there's a lot of functional labs out there, but not all of them are the same quality. And that's where, practitioners can know that, at FDN, we look at these tests, we vet them out, we, do the R&D work to only offer the best ones to the practitioners and through the medical director program. There are a lot of tests out there that we could offer, but we don't, because we found that while they sound good on paper, they don't really pan out clinically, and so we don't include them. And so that the tests that we're recommending are good. They're reliable. They've proven it to us that they're good. We know that they're good quality tests. They will give us the data that we want. No test is perfect, because again, pathogens can hide, viruses can hide. You can't find every little thing, but they're the best that are out there. And so I love sharing that with people, because I spent so much money myself on all sorts of tests, before FDN, where I heard from others that they were good, and of course I didn't know all that much myself to know if they're good or not. So I spend, hundreds, thousands of dollars on these tests that now I know I could have saved my money, because they have a less than 5% chance of finding a pathogen in my experience. So they're just, I don't want other people to just spend their money and then get that hopeless feeling too when you run a test and it comes back and says you're normal. It's like I rejoice when I see a test that is just the worst thing ever, because to me that's hope. We got answers, so now we can design something to correct that. If we don't have any kind of information on what might be at fault, we don't know where to go. So I want the tests that are going to give me the best data, and so that's what really drives me to continue learning.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm thankful for you in many respects, but for sure one thing, like you said, with all the time you spend and looking at listening to things. You are good about taking a bunch of information and distilling it down real nicely to where we can understand it within the philosophy and the way we think about with FDN, much like Reed does. So really got two people that do a good job of that, of it saves us a whole lot of time. So you guys can be thankful to Lisa for her time that she spends going through that, understanding those things, and then just saving us a whole lot of research time, more or less. And also, too, like you said, we really do vet those tests. Anything to the medical director program, the reason we have people say, why don't you have this test, or why did you remove this test? It's for these very reasons here, because we're seeing these tests and we're seeing these retests, and we see what's effective, what works. It's ethical, because you want that person, that money that they're spending, to be well worth it, and we want people to have really good results. So if something is not yielding those two things, then it's not something we want to be doing. And so Lisa's a big part of that. I think, Lisa, any test that we look at possibly offering or doing, I know you have either ran it on yourself already or you get to run it on yourself, so you're your own guinea pig many times.
Exactly. Yep. I love being a guinea pig.
So talk a little bit about, I guess, just the experience working through the medical director program and doing consults. Now, like most everybody probably listening has had a consult with you at some point, maybe multiple ones. Maybe talk a little bit about your experience there and kind of what you put into a consult, what you think about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So anytime anyone orders a test to the medical director program, they get a free half-hour consultation with one of us clinical advisors. And it was originally just me handling all of those, but as I've moved on to some other projects, I had to free up a little more time. So now there are a few other people helping me out, so that's great. There's several of us now. So sometimes you'll get my name on the email from Brandy with your test results. Sometimes you'll get one of their names. And basically, we're there to provide guidance to you as a practitioner. So some people need a little more help with interpretation. Maybe it's a new lab to them, or they haven't run one before. Maybe they need more help with protocols, just to know how to design things or how to sequence things if many things are showing up. Sometimes it's just general questions that they have. So, I certainly tailor my consultation around that, whatever that person's particular needs are, so we can focus and spend more time on that. But yeah, in general, I basically go over, find out who do these test results belong to. So, I want to get a client history, and that's why we ask everyone to submit the case notes form to the clinical advisor beforehand, so we can review that and just get an idea of the client, main complaints, what they've tried, what other tests have been done, what have they shown, just so we can correlate everything and give the best recommendations. And so we go over that, the interpretation of the tests, some protocols, other considerations, because, we see so many of these lab tests coming in, so we know, certain things can be a red flag for other things. Like anytime I see, say, blastocystis hominis come up on a test, I always tell someone, blastocystis hominis and H. pylori, they like to hang out together. So if you see one, chances are the other one is there too. It's just more hidden. And so, half the time we, clear whatever one shows up first, and on a retest or a test after that, sometimes it's not right away, we're going to see the other one come out. And so I'd let people know that in advance, because say the person really has strong H. pylori symptoms and we're seeing blasto. I can tell them, well, I bet you H. pylori is there too. Let's just deal with what we're seeing on the surface first, and then that'll pop up and we can deal with that too. So, that's what I love about the medical director program. Not only connecting with everyone, talking to the practitioners, finding out, what tests they're using and how their businesses are going, and, just, getting a pulse of the current feel for things and what protocols are working, what protocols aren't working, what tests are giving the best results. I love seeing the wide variety and of different things that are showing up on tests, because when you're just dealing with your own clients, you're getting often a very, a narrow population, sometimes just mainly one state or one part of the country, or, all people that have certain conditions if you specialize in something. So I like to see, all these lab tests from people across the countries and different regions, different specialties. So it really helps me to learn more quickly because I'm being exposed to so much. So that's really fun for me, too, as a practitioner.
Yeah, same thing mentoring too. You get to see so many test results, and the more you see, that's why I tell people starting out or once they graduate, one of the best things you can do, it's good to get additional education, listen to different trainings and do things like that, but one of the best things you can do is just get out there and run labs. The more you see, the more trends that you see, the more confident you become. Nothing startles you or scares you. You can handle all situations that come towards you. It's experience. So mentoring does that for you. MDP consults do that for us. And just your own practice. The more you see, the better you become at it. So just get out there and run labs. That's what I tell a lot of people to do. Just get out there and run the 5 labs, and don't worry about the other stuff right now. Give yourself 6 months or a year of just running the basic labs and just help people that way. So on the case notes, I want to add something to that too. You guys, before you do an MDP consult, make sure that you fill out that case notes form thoroughly. Mainly it's for your guys' benefit. So you've got a half an hour. So if you have to spend the first 10 minutes going through the history of that person, then you're cutting into the time. So fill out that thoroughly. The clinical advisor will look at that before going into the session. So they'll have the history already in their head, and that way you can have plenty of time to cover test results. Because sometimes those, as Lisa would agree, most test results takes almost a half an hour to cover all the different markers on there. So make sure you take some time to do that. Fill that out thoroughly. It's going to benefit you guys in the long run.
Yep.
Let's see. So talk a little bit about work with AFDN-P and being part of the association too, and answering questions on the forum there. What kind of things are you seeing on the forum when we've got the guaranteed answer forum there? What kind of things do we see popping up there?
Yeah, kind of a wide variety of things. You know, a lot of people wanting to know. I see a lot of posts about lab test interpretation, and I'm seeing a lot of things with the Dutch, especially right now. There's been a lot of talk about Precision Analytical's test, the Dutch test, which is the urine adrenal hormone test. And so a lot of practitioners have been getting into that, and the lab does offer some support, but a lot of people, they don't necessarily come to the same approach, from the FDN approach of things. And so a lot of people like to see what FDN's perspective is on the Dutch test and how do we incorporate that into our protocols and everything else. So I see, I get a lot of emails about the Dutch, and, I see a lot of questions on the forum as well. And that's why I'm happy to announce that the next advanced training module is going to be about the markers that are on the Dutch test. So it's all about the HPA axis, including the latest information on that, also as well the hormone metabolites. So, a lot of times we've been looking more at the hormone levels on, say, at 205, where we have the estrogen, testosterone, we have the progesterone, but we don't know necessarily how those hormones are being metabolized. And that information can be really important to know, too, because maybe your estrogen level is okay, but you don't metabolize it very well. And so you're actually making metabolites that are carcinogenic instead of protective. So the more information, again, that we have, the more we can do to, alter things and correct them, and so things can favor a good pathway instead of a bad pathway, and we can prevent things from happening down the road. And so this HPA axis and hormone metabolites module should be coming out very soon, and it's going to go into a lot of detail. So basically it uses the Dutch as an example. You can use other tests as well. Basically the information can be applied to any HPA axis and hormone metabolites test. So whether you're using, saliva or urine or whatnot, high cortisol is high cortisol. What the recommendations will stand across the board. And so this is going to be a very, very detailed training. Spend a lot of time on it. All the advanced trainings come with a reference guide ebook. And so I've heard feedback from a lot of people that they love that, because a lot of times, you do training courses and, maybe you have slides, maybe some very basic handouts. But if you can't remember something, you'll remember, I think that was on video number 2. It went into this. And so then you're scrolling through videos and trying to find stuff. With our trainings, you get this massive ebook that it's basically like a transcript plus of the training. All the information in the training is in your ebook. And so that's, your reference guide to refer back to as much as you need to. You can search for certain words. So if there was something about epitestosterone and I can't remember what it does, You can get the document and search for epitestosterone, and boom, there you have it. No need to just, scroll through videos, try to find which one it was, or any of that kind of stuff. So, I can tell you right now that this ebook for this HPA Access module is massive. It's about 235 pages. So you are getting essentially like a full book with this training.
And good point you made there. It's taking HPA axis dysfunction to the next level as far as deeper understanding some of the nuances of that. So no matter what labs you're really running, you can benefit just from the education side of this. And I've got to preview that and work with you some on that. And it is taking it kind of to the next level. It's giving you some additional information, and things change. Things shift and change in our understanding. So we've got the latest information on there, and a lot of people have been clamoring for that, wanting to be able to use this. So I'm excited to say, it's going to be coming out very soon. And it's a great addition to the other modules we've got launched already. So our SIBO module, or I'll say your SIBO module, this is mostly your SIBO module there, functional blood chemistry and oxalates. And I was kind of surprised because whenever we launched the AFDNP, the oxalate course is one that we put out there as a free gift or a free encouragement to sign up over a certain period of time. And it was one that didn't sell, hadn't been selling as many as the SIBO and the functional blood chemistry. But once people got that, they said, wow, this is awesome. I had no idea. So every module you're going to get there is going to be something you're going to be able to apply to your practice, knowledge that you're going to be able to use. So they're just pretty amazing. And functional blood chemistry one is I've found it to be very handy, especially the spreadsheet, being able to plug numbers into the spreadsheet, look at the reference guide, and pull things out of lab tests. The big thing with that is doctors say, well, okay, here's your lab results, and everything's within range, everything looks good. Well, you plug it in the worksheet, and you look at some of these trends, some of these things that Lisa's kind of connected together, and you'll find many things on a functional side to work on that were totally missed by most practitioners. That's an excellent use there. We had really good feedback on that just for that use, because a lot of people come in with blood scores. So you can take your labs and how they're presenting and blood scores and kind of look for those trends, those commonalities amongst everything we're seeing there. It's just a way to get additional information to help your clients out and make those better recommendations. So, of course, SIBO is a hot topic too, so that's an excellent training there with SIBO. That was very complete. And you've had your experience yourself with SIBO, so you've been there, done that, and had the odd diets and different things that you had to do to work on that. So they're quite awesome. They're really each one of them are, as you can just tell, it's a labor of love and just so much information packed into those. They're excellent.
Yeah, I like to try to teach as how I'd like to be taught, so I'm very detail-oriented. I like everything to be comprehensive. I hate it when I pay so much for a course and then there's nothing actionable at the end of it. So you spend hundreds of dollars and it's like, well, I don't know what to do. It's kind of a rah-rah cheerleading thing. Yeah, testing is cool, and yeah, we can do stuff and help, but I don't really have anything at the end of the day that I can do. It's missing that piece. Or they'll just give general recommendations like, oh, support the adrenals, improve your diet. It's like, well, that doesn't help me. I want to know, how do I improve my diet? How do I support the HPA axis? And so that's what I've tried to, like any question that I could come up with, it's like I've tried to answer that ahead of time by putting it into the training to be really thorough and include all that stuff, so you're not left with, well, I don't know how to use any of this information at the end. You should have a really good, well-rounded view of things at the end and know how to apply it. And then also I, talk about, I come from that FDN perspective, and so all of this is taught within that framework of how do you, correlate this with the stuff you're already doing. So like you mentioned functional blood chemistry, say you see high eosinophils on someone. It's, and you've done a stool test and it's negative, there's no parasites. Well, this is something I had in myself too. I had eosinophils of a 12. Eosinophils shouldn't be above a 3. If they're above a 3, it's a major red flag for parasites in the intestinal tract. So for me, even though the stool test wasn't finding them at that moment, I knew they were there. So I know to keep testing because I know I will find them. And sure enough, I found a couple more on the next test I did after that. But it's really great to help for all of these things. SIBO, again, say you've done the parasite testing. Maybe you've found stuff. Maybe you've dealt with it. The client still has gas and bloating, and they can't tolerate any kind of garlic or bone broth or any kinds of those foods or probiotics. And so you can see that these are the red flags for SIBO. Maybe we now need to test for SIBO and go down that route because maybe we've dealt with all the parasites. We've probably dealt with the things that cause the SIBO. And now if we, get to the point of dealing with the SIBO itself, then we may get that huge symptom improvement with those last remaining symptoms, the gas, the bloating, the skin conditions, the histamine intolerance, all that kind of stuff. So all of this just, works together to make you a better practitioner.
Yes. And these are, HPA Axis module might be a little different, but these other ones, you can get through them in a week or maybe 2 weeks if you didn't have a whole lot of time. They're packed. They're concise and they're very useful. So it's not something where if you think you're taking a 3-month course or something, you're not doing that. It's they're small enough that you can digest them in a couple weeks or less and apply them directly to what you're doing. So don't be afraid of that if you feel like you don't have time. Lisa's saving you time with these because she's done hundreds of hours of research and she just distills it down into 8 hours or 10 hours of videos and the guide. So it's actually you're ultimately saving a lot of time and money that way. And they count towards CEUs. So keeping your good standing with FDN, ask you guys to turn in every couple of years 6 CEU credits. So this would count definitely toward that. So you can count that, and that would take care of your requirements there for a couple of years, getting into that. So can't say enough about them. They're so excellent. We've had great. We have a little survey there. We ask people what they thought about it, and we just get glowing reviews on those. So you guys check them out. There's links all over the place to those, but check it out, see what you think about them. And like I said, Lisa, we're here to support you. Overall, that's kind of the goal of FDN is for you guys to be successful in what you do. In every way, in the business side, on the case management side, client management side, lab interpretation, everything. We want to make sure that you guys know AFDNP, advanced modules, all those things are your postgraduate support. So once you graduate, get through the course, you're not alone. You're not just left to the wolves. You can rely on us to help you, support you, whatever level that you end up needing. So medical director program, all of that is there to support you. Anything else on the advanced modules, Lisa, you wanted to say?
Other than I love putting them together, I'd almost feel like putting them together just for myself, if nothing else, just because I like them as a reference. I'm pulling so much information into these things, everything. I have notes everywhere, from Post-it notes to notebooks to books to computer documents and folders. And, I have information everywhere. And so sometimes it's hard because it's like, oh, I know I have that somewhere. I don't know where I put it. So for me, it's so rewarding just to put everything together and just dump it into this one source. It's like just a brain dump of everything I know and I've learned and all little gems and everything like that into this one thing because, so I love it. I refer to it constantly, what I've created so far myself, because it's like, I know I put it in there, so if I can't remember later, I know right where to look. It's in there.
Go. All organized. Well, we've got just a few minutes before we end the show here. I guess the last question I wanted to kind of ask you there is, our group, our postgraduates, our group that's out there running labs and doing this work. Any last-minute advice here for them? So, struggles people seem to still be having, either in the way they think about things or any advice you want to kind of give. You probably repeat the same things during the consults, but if now you have an audience of everybody here, what would you want to tell them? What advice do you have?
Sure. A lot of it is, don't get bogged down by a diagnosis. It's just a label that a doctor gave them that's just, an explanation for their symptoms. It doesn't tell you why those symptoms are there or what needs to be done with the client. So, a lot of people get wrapped up, oh, this client has some weird disorder I've never heard about. It's like, well, it doesn't matter. It all goes back to DRESS. Work on the basics. Use your foundational tests. Those tests are applicable for everyone because, looking at how the brain and the adrenals are communicating, looking at the hormones, looking at the gut function, intestinal permeability, food sensitivities, that's going to apply to everyone in just optimizing health overall. It doesn't matter what kind of label they've been given. So I just tell people, don't, get overly concerned about that. Just work on building health. I use that more as the label can be a way to guide me into certain things, like, oh, someone has rosacea. Well, I know that that's been connected in research to H. pylori, so maybe I just keep that in the back of my mind, or, oh, they have, this certain condition, or, they have joint pain. Oh, blastocystis hominis and endolimax nana cause joint pain. Maybe that's that. So that's how I use a diagnosis. I don't use it to get overly concerned about things or doing specific things for that diagnosis. I'm looking at it as clues for, what's the underlying cause, what's been linked in research to that particular disorder. But just, work on the basics, that's what's going to get you your success and get the person to lose that label eventually.
Right. Very good. Excellent stuff today. So, well, last minute here, I appreciate you being on, Lisa. I love working with you and learn from you and just hang out and talk and just kindred spirits. We're all in this together and doing this excellent work, and we get to help each other out. We get to see trends and share things. It's just a good community to be involved with. And so, again, appreciate you being on the call and sharing with us. You stay warm up in Minnesota this winter, and just continue to do what you're doing. So, and we know you guys know we're here for you any way that we can be. We'll have a Friday call next week. Next 2 weeks, though, I believe we're going to be off on Friday calls because of the holidays and stuff. So. But anyhow, we're here for you guys, and talk with you guys next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.